Alright guys, here we have a 1999 EZGO TXT 36 volt, which has had a battery box failure. The battery cage has basically rotted out in its 19 years of existence, and we've dropped a battery straight through the bottom of the cage here. You can see number 2 batteries dropped through. What I've already done was I removed all the cables and the nuts to the batteries that I can get easy access to. I didn't remove them off of this one because we'll just lift that straight out and then remove them. Got the nuts off of the battery tie-down studs so I could lift that bracket off of there. We'll get the batteries out of the way and inspect the battery box itself, and we're probably just going to cut it out and rebuild it from scratch. This is probably all going to go horribly wrong very quickly. Oh yeah, okay. The battery cage is lifting out instead of that. Let's see how... Oh yeah. You can see how the batteries basically just dropped right into the bottom of the cart. Yeah, this is bad. This is bad. These batteries are also 2009s. See if we can get this one out. So this one's going to be needing batteries soon. Holy crap. Yeah, talk about rotted out. Holy shit. There's a tie down. Here's what the tie down was attached to. The whole entire structure is toast. Let's see if we can... Oh, okay, we gotta lift this one out first because it's dropping. Here's the one that fell through. There's literally nothing left of the battery cage. Here's the brackets that the battery cage was attached to, or the battery tie-down was attached to. And you can see just how bad this one really was. The whole support structure in the middle here, all of this stuff is just all gone. There's really nothing left to it. Yeah, we're going to be cutting all this out and rebuilding it from scratch. Alright, so a few years ago, when I started doing this, I made a diagram of exactly what this battery cage usually would look like. Now, looking at it, looks like it would be in there like this, right? Well, no, it goes in the cart like this. And I'll let you, if you want to screenshot that, go for it. And it's basically just a layout of the lengths of how long each piece needs to be, the distance from place to place, and I built it exactly like this. And it gives you a lot of room, actually, and a lot of flexibility for the batteries to fit. So even when the batteries are in there and you start getting crap in between the batteries and the frame rail, which periodically you should take them apart and clean them, it allows for the batteries to drop into place without basically getting jammed in there where you got to force them in and force them out where they don't sit properly. All right, so now I'm going to begin cutting my angle iron, which I'll show you all that stuff. But remember, when cutting steel or dealing with really loud noises, don't forget to use ear protection. I use these 3M 1100 earplugs. They're foam earplugs. Basically roll them in your fingers, and when they get warm, you stick them in your ear canal so it blocks out all the sound. I usually buy them by the 100 pack because I go through so many of them. And these are fresh gloves. They're not the gloves that were touching battery acid, so I'm not putting battery acid in my ears. 22 3/4. Make short order of a 20-foot piece of steel pretty quick. Alright, just to show you now how this is going to work. So these are the width. And then we have our top piece. Basically, we're going to be like this. Let me rearrange this here. Just like so. So that is basically going to be our battery cage, and then we'll space these out equally accordingly. And then we'll have a couple of tabs here for the center to go on. Alright, so basically what we need to do now is we have to move the front rail back 1 3/4 from here, because this is what's going to get welded to the existing frame. And then we get equal spacing here, and our batteries will drop right onto this. This will weld to the front of the cart. We'll weld some bracketry this way in the back, which will be hung from the back of the cart, and then weld it to the frame on both sides and 4 corners, and bam, we're done. We're going to cut out the old and put in the new. I'm basically going to mark now everything that needs to be cleaned. Okay, disclaimer. I am not a professional welder. Nor do I claim to be. See how a battery fits in it. Drops in exactly how it should. Perfect. Alright, so now I feel confident enough now where we can go through and just start welding all this stuff in permanently. Get all the welds cleaned up, and then we'll put our standoffs here for anchoring down our center batteries, or for our battery tie down. And then we can get it ready for our uprights to weld it to the cart. And then we got to get the old one out of the cart. Alright, so we got the battery cage basically just sat in place here. It's not welded in, not bolted in, it's just kind of hanging out for the moment. So we're going to utilize the original rear supports because they're in good shape. I just have to grind them and clean them up. And then we have basically the battery cage in place. And the only thing left to fabricate is going to be the tie down points. But I can do that while it's in the cart. I didn't film any of the removal of the old tray because I had the grinder going, cutting torches going. I really just didn't want my camera around any of that nonsense, so I opted out of filming. That's where we're at right now. A lot of dust too. I mean, you see all that stuff on the ground. Once we get everything welded up on this and it's in place and I do a test fit of all the batteries, I'll clean everything down with some acetone, and then we'll give it a quick shot of paint, and then the batteries can finally go in. So alright, I will check back in after we make some progress. A little bit of an update here. I got the battery cage welded in place. I know lighting is going to be a little cattywampus here. Let's see here. I'll try to show you. My welds, again, I am not a pro welder by any means, by any stretch of anybody's imagination. That weld turned out pretty good. It's a little globbly, but this one over here got a little messy on me. I actually got caught. My sleeve got caught, and I kind of like ended up jumping all over the place. And then these ones here, they're not terrible. This one here is a bit gloppy itself, but yeah. It's holding the weight. I can stand in there. It holds my weight no problem, so I know that it's good as far as weight carrying. I'm just letting it cool down a little bit now. I've just cut out the pieces that we're going to weld in here between the batteries. that will give us our tie down point. So once that cools down a little bit, get them cleaned up and ready to be welded in place. And then once that's all welded, all I got to do is just a little bit of cleanup on some of the steel here. Just have to wait now. Let's hurry up and wait for this stuff to cool down. As you can see, we have the little tabs welded in, and they are welded in good, nice and strong. I have the anti-rust enamel coating on it. It's basically this stuff here. It's a plasti coat, anti-rust enamel, superior metal protection. I've used it before on many different projects. Seems to hold up pretty good. It's got this typical primer color to it, this kind of like rust color orange, which is odd that it's an anti-rust and it's rust color, but no, I digress. And I think it turned out pretty good. It looks pretty, with the exception of the battery tie-down tabs, I mean, it looks fairly stock. It looks fairly factory. Once it's painted, you won't even be able to really tell. At least a layperson won't be able to tell that anything was altered. And I also did get the bottom side of the cage and around these sides here. That's why there's a bit of overspray in places it shouldn't be. I got everything painted that needs to be painted. It looks good. I know it's really hard to tell because, you know, black does not show up very well. It's kind of like a medium gloss paint. But this is going to get a nice 24-hour quick cure. Well, probably 12-hour quick cure. Once it's cured overnight, and I'm going to get the battery pack itself cleaned up. We're going to probably have to fix a few of the wires. The cables are pretty gnarly. Battery tray is basically done. I mean, you can see it looks pretty good. I know the lighting is terrible. This is all I have. Okay, I have that little tiny drop light. And the lights in here are not that bright to begin with because there's only 3 of them, which kind of sucks, but you know, it is what it is. But yeah, so we're painted. The tray is in, it's welded, cleaned, done. Next step now is to drop the batteries in, get them cleaned and connected. And then this cart is basically done. This can go back. This was a storage cart that desperately needed this repair. Just to give you a little shot here, I got the cart done. It's out of the shop now, and this is what was left out of that battery box. You can see this stuff here is really just rotted. And all of that dust is all the rust from the remaining frame. I mean, that's the whole frame right there. That's all that was left of the structure itself. You can see there's not a lot there. So that's what happens, you know, if you don't clean your cart, you know, you're going to have this kind of stuff. So it's always good to rinse down your battery pack. Don't be afraid to use a little bit of warm water and baking soda. Dump it over the top of the pack and then rinse it off real good with cool water, you know, or garden hose or whatever. That will help mitigate this issue a little bit and help, you know, prevent, or it'll at least slow it down. It might not get rid of it entirely. I mean, the best way to get rid of it entirely is to remove the battery pack like once a year and, you know, do an inspection on your battery cage and make sure everything is looking good and nice and solid. If you notice that there's any paint peeling or it's starting to bubble up a little bit, this would be the time to, you know, give it a quick wire brush or a sanding, or even hit it with the grinder real quick. Paint it with a anti-rust enamel or a rust inhibiting paint of some sort, following the directions of the paint manufacturer, and then, you know, it should help, and then you can put your batteries back in the cart. Okay, so yeah, that sounds like a lot of work, but it's a really good measure for preventative maintenance and for preventative repairs such as this.